Hello and welcome to Real Hi-Fi Help. Let's look at what the used hi-fi gear market is telling us. I've used a couple of thousand hours the past, I would say like 20 years, looking through most of the used market. And I can tell you that the time that I've used hunting down offers online and driving to people's houses was a huge part of my hi-fi journey. And it was kind of necessary for me personally understanding hi-fi. But that I also realized looking back at it that it was a huge waste of time in my life where if I was just able to earn like a decent amount of money, I would have saved a huge amount of, yeah, huge amount of money in regards to time. So, interesting, In one way, you want the experience and you kind of want to waste your time getting that experience because that experience is priceless. But in another way, you also want to earn that extra money. So, yeah, I kind of missed out on that extra money. So, that's of course annoying for me. But, yeah. And I only realized now, being older, that not using so much time on saving like 10 to 50% on used gear and maybe even more actually cost me a lot of missed opportunities in the economical. Like I said before, it's not just money, but stuff in your life that you miss out on because you just dedicate so much time on hi-fi. So I think the lesson to learn is that, especially the last 5 years, looking at the used market, prices have just been crazy high. And I think that I can feel that more and more people are generally earning less, so that the industry in the hi-fi world is targeted more at the lower end of hi-fi gear, trying to like connect to a new customer group. I really feel that this is like more obvious than ever now. Also, especially when you're looking at YouTube and the gear that they're reviewing. I mean, they're basically just, I would say, like at least 90% of the reviews on YouTube are just like reviewing crap gear where they're saying constant stuff like, "Oh, I can't believe this Chinese amp is so good," and "Wow, this $1,000 amp sounds like a $10,000 amp." Constant. This, I mean, people are just used to a standard that is so low that they've lost all sense of reality. None of these people that are testing equipment have really a proper system like an ear amp or a Jadis amp or like a Top Turu Tube Guru amp, or something that's close to like Negra or Spectral or Audio Note or Kondo or anything like that. I mean, they're all like down there with their small Yamaha and Denon receivers and Cyrus and Kenwood gear, looking at like the newest new like shit gear and Denafrips and all that. It's bad. It's really bad. And yeah, sometimes you get a pretty good value offer. I mean, actually, a lot of times, because most of the market is basically using most of their energy on focusing on that, small range of, I would say, like a couple of $100 to a couple of $1,000. Everybody's a sucker for buying stuff when it's in that range because then it's affordable. Then everybody can join in on the game, but just don't fall for that trick. They want you to believe that it's good when in fact it's just so bad that when you run it at a certain level of quality of sound, when you don't challenge the sound too much, it can actually have the illusion of sounding pretty good. So don't be fooled by that. And so many people now with Macintosh and Accuphase like gear, or people with decent Sensu or Yamaha gear from a good era, are just insane with their prices on the used markets. I constantly see this, MA7000 amplifier, MA6900 amplifier. Amplifiers that were, they stopped producing these amplifiers about 10 years ago. These amplifiers are like still costing 75% of their original price, even though they're like 10 years old. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? I mean, it's just insane. I mean, price wise, those amplifiers should only be maximum 50% of what they originally cost back then. So it's just crazy. It feels like a lot of people just aren't making any money in the world, and they're just like sticking to these old pretend good models. And I think it's especially bad with Accuphase, I've seen a lot of Accuphase amps that are about 25, 30 years old. And they're still like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for those amplifiers, which is just insane. Also, some once in a while you see a Sansui amplifier like $5,000, $6,000 for something that's from 1989 or 85 or something like that. It's, again, crazy. And so it's worth really considering that. Do you want to spend your time with all these, I would say, losers that are constantly on the used market, going from door to door, looking for the next bargain, wasting maybe a couple of 100 hours a year on saving perhaps a couple of hundred or a couple of $1,000? Is that really worth your time? You have to take that into consideration, because I would say that from around 5 to 10 years ago, there were some pretty good deals once in a while. But I would say that, there's just such a big distance between the really good deals and the regular stuff that you see nowadays. And I would say most gear on the market does not deserve to be sold. It just deserves to go directly to the flea market, They should stop selling most of the gear that's on the used market for a couple of $1,000 and just give it up, mate. Just give it up. Send it to a local flea market. Don't get anything for your money. Don't waste your time negotiating with 10, 20 people over mail, using 6 months trying to sell an old Vincent or Musical Fidelity amplifier for like $1,000 to $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. That's 10, 15 years old. Stop doing that. Stop wasting your time. Just give it away. I did that with a lot of my gear. I just said, fuck this. Away with that. I have to produce some proper money at work, and then just just use some money that I once in a while I don't have. Take a loan, borrow it from a friend or family, or just quickly do that, and then quickly pay off the debts, and then you're there. You've owned it. Because once you get into this low end of gear, it becomes almost a disease that you depend on, where you like this, you like that, you're not sure, you're still sticking to that crappy CD player because that's the best one you've heard, and then you're trying a new fancy amplifier, but you're not really sure about that amplifier. I mean, you're constantly in doubt, not sure, all over the place, and that's what low end gear does to you. It just makes you into this whole soup of turns you into this whole soup of confusion when you're battling yourself, and you're experimenting with QED and super cables and eBay copy cables, and you bought an amplifier for $1,000, but then you didn't like it after a couple of months, and then you bought a new one for 1,500, and just save your money. Save your money and hit it hard, hit hard on stuff that normally costs past $5,000 to $10,000 new. That's where you want to kind of put your energy in, And that's where, gear like Macintosh, Ear, Aquaphase, Jadis, stuff like that starts to appear. The good stuff, and the middle class Macintosh gear, integrated Macintosh, integrated Aquaphase, stuff like that. Then we're getting into business. Then magic is about to happen. Then you have power to do a hell of a lot more. When you're stuck down there, it's all just bias and confusion, and it's all kind of the same, but still it isn't. But then you just get out of that zone if you can. But at least, use a couple of months getting used to that in the start. Everybody needs to kind of experience that zone to start with, But once you've experienced that, get away from that zone. Get away from loser friends that have these $50-$100 amplifiers, or like $1,000 amplifiers, and they want to do their own cables and put oil on it and rub it into their groin and season it with some sea salts and sugar. Just get away from that. That can change sound, and that can make you save a lot of money. But this whole level of hi-fi just becomes very weird and like almost obsessive for the neurotic and people who are just insane and trying to beat the system, because no one actually gets to beat the system. I know one guy out of a couple of hundred people that I've met and a couple of thousand systems that I listen to, one guy who's beaten the system. Actually, maybe two. I think two guys. But those are people at the top of the game. Those are like 2 out of a handful of people in the entire world that know exactly what they're doing, and they have access to stuff that we don't have access to. So they can do that. So my kind of advice for most people is just like, don't get offended by this, but just don't hang out with losers. Seriously. Because they always have some kind of a loser sound coming from that area, doing a certain type of thing that's really cool and can, give you a lot of value. But just, dump those friends, just get away from those friends and find some proper friends that can really help you, some true inspiration. And that's what I did. I only have, 3 friends? I have 3 friends, and that's it. All of the rest, they just get the finger, because they are always going to waste my time dealing with all kinds of gray zone, snake oil type of things. And if you want to get into that good level, and if you want to have proper friends that have a proper personality and that are fun to be with, and where you really like them, just deal with those people. The too many of the loser type, in especially hi-fi, that just waste your time, either being completely drunk on their own pride, or they have some realizations that are just so far from the truth, but they've only kept themselves in that certain zone where they can see what is true. And there's so many people that are just so delusional, especially that don't earn enough money. And because they don't earn enough money, they create this like cuckoo reality of stuff, So that's just me ranting, but let me just continue on with what really is this video. So you have to realize that when you buy gear that's generally more than 15 years old, this is like a circa thing, so you don't have to take it too seriously. A lot of engineers take what I say too seriously. That it generally will have a different sound characteristic compared to when it was new. Meaning that it will be more noisy, imprecise, and actually many times more reserved in sound, because the components are worn down, and stuff needs to get resoldered once in a while, probably every 15-20 25, 30 years. It depends, you know, on what gear you're running and how hot it gets and all of that, build quality and that. But that's one of the reasons why a lot of people just like over romanticize with these Snell speakers, like, oh, Snell is the best, Snell can do this and that. And I know that audio note speakers are built on the Snell design, but I mean, they almost can't be further from each other sound wise if you compare the audio note sound from today compared to the current used Snell speakers that are out there. Time has just made Snell speakers really slow, imprecise, and limited in time, and you can't really challenge the sound and take it up to like a mid to a high class level. You can't. It just falls apart because, you know, these are speakers built with cheap components. And yeah, at the time when they were sold, they were a really good offer, and they were a lot more precise and good value. And I don't care if someone restores them, they could partly be a lot better than from back then if you like put an audio note unit in it instead of the Snell. But it's a package thing, you know. When you do that, other problems start to occur. I've heard a lot of modified Snell speakers. I've heard a lot of modified audio note kit speakers and stuff like that, and they're absolutely horrible. So you have to realize that, yeah, like I always say in my videos, truth belongs on many different levels depending on where you are willing to go as a person. So yeah, Snell speakers are good as long as you keep in a very low class level. So yeah, Snell could be good for you if you're starting in the hi-fi world and you want to deal with normal gear. And for the first couple of years, they could actually solve a lot of your problems, and you could potentially save a lot of money on that. But don't let that delude you, thinking that like, oh, the way that they used to make speakers in the olden days are so much better than nowadays. They're just charging too much and putting silver wire here and there. Don't become one of those losers, you know. Get real and fully understand that Snell is good for the money used on a certain low-level system in a certain condition. Fine, get that out of your system. Later on, get some proper gear, like for example, Fender Stain speaker, and then you can go like from that to like a JBL L100 classic speaker, and then perhaps later, if you want to, you could go for like a bottom model of the high-end range of audio note for like a couple of $1,000 used or new. And then you've moved throughout the levels, and you've done it in an efficient and cheap way, and you can just give the finger to the rest of the people in the world that want to constantly be on this track of hi-fi or that track, because you've got the ability to do whatever you want, because now you're seeing the full truth of what is the hi-fi world. So I also want to say that when we're dealing with, for example, CD players, when you get a lot of CD players, the drives usually fail after 5 to 10 years. They start skipping or making an error read, or they stop during a song or whatever. And, I've experienced from some friends that changing drives on some of those expensive CD players can cost you like $500 to $3,000 just fixing that. And then you figure out when you get it, it's anyway just a Denon drive inside, and then you just think like, what? Did I just pay $1,000 for a Denon drive in my like Macintosh or whatever brand? Did I really pay that amount of money? Just think about that. If you were to like dissect, like, let's just take a random old Macintosh CD player. If you were to like dissect the amount of money that goes in building that, not taking into consideration the drive, but just like the parts of it, I don't think that you would get to more than $1,000, even though they'd sell that CD player for like $10,000 in the store. So you have to take these things into consideration when you're getting gear. There are some high end brands that have some really expensive drives, and sometimes they are expensive because they are good, and sometimes they're expensive because they're just a brand, an expensive, put together pretend heritage brand. And yeah, you have to take all of these things into consideration. And I was lucky when I got my used 20-year-old used Yamaha CD. I was lucky because the guy that took care of it really took care of it, and I cleaned it so many times inside the lens with the lens cleaning CD, and I had it upgraded, and I was one of the lucky ones. But don't expect to be one of the lucky ones like I was. I used thousands of hours of looking at used gear, getting to that situation where it was possible. So this is the amount of time right here that you should expect to use on HiFi, finding used offers. As you can see, that's pretty shocking. That just tells you how messed up the whole world is nowadays, and that you can't really buy stuff off the used market anymore. It's just like a dumping ground for a lot of gear that people don't want to send to the flea markets. And once in a while, you see stuff like this down here, but it just goes really fast, just like woof, it's just gone within a couple of hours many times. And if it's still there, like on audiomarkt.de, if it's still there, like a lot of those, what do you call it? Ads? A lot of those people, I can't remember what the name was. If it's still there, then it's just, overpriced. So I've seen like Negra VPA monoblocks, and I was thinking, yeah, I got to get some Negra. A third of the price. After, I think, 15 years. And that's still too expensive. Still probably worth it money-wise, but not a lot of people are going to realize that. So, yeah. And, it's also my personal opinion that when you have like a 30-year-old Aquaphase, let's just say amplifier, middle class model, that it shouldn't like cost a third of the original price 30 years later. That's just insane. People should stop doing this and kidding themselves. It wasn't really that good, even though the old Aquaphase sound was probably a tiny bit better than the newer one. Don't kid yourself and think that it's that good. It really isn't. So it should more be like 1/10 of the price. And if you can't sell it, send it off to a flea market. Don't care. Don't waste your time as a seller or as a buyer buying stuff at a third of the price that is 20, 30, 40 years old. It's insane. It's simply insane. Don't do that. And that's taking, that's still taking, what's it called? I'm at a loss of words today. Inflation. That's taking inflation into consideration. And yeah, like I said, with Sensui, old Yamaha stuff from the good era, Macintosh stuff, just try and get away from that if you can. And you also have to know that the majority of gear that's on the market is basically just, like I said before, borderline waste products that are old and obsolete in sound. So just look up Yamaha and try and see how many models there are from their 2000, 3000 and 500 amplifier series. You almost can't find them used online. And there's a reason for that. That's the good stuff. People want to keep the good stuff. They only want to sell the 1000 models and below, especially 7, 8, 500, 3, 400 models, which are, basically crap. They might be good value for people down there, but they come nowhere near the really good stuff. So people just aren't selling the good stuff anymore, and you have to use so much of your time finding those few people that do. So you might want to consider not doing that. And I think my phone is ringing. Just end this whole video. You also want to know that no one on the used market will ever use more than $3,000 to $5,000 on buying something for you, and that was a really harsh truth for me to deal with, because I had a lot of gear that was worth so much more, and I just had to realize that most people that go on these markets, they just piss broke. They don't have money, and it doesn't matter if you're selling like an audio, 2, 3, 5-year-old audio notes, $200,000 amp. They're not gonna pay more than $10,000 for that. They won't. They really won't, because the used market is just totally broken. And but yeah, once in a while, a guy from a weird exotic country, could probably contact you and say like, I'll be there in a couple of hours, and then you get the the black swan, the one in the million chance that a thing like that happens, and then he actually will pay whatever you charge for that thing. So just know that this is a market where you can't really get more than $3,000 to $5,000 from people, from whatever it is that you're selling. It doesn't matter if you're selling an expensive Macintosh system that has cost $50,000. He'll only offer you $5,000 for it, 5 years used many times, because that's what most people can produce of money. So it's a sad truth. It's a sad truth, and I think a lot of people are kind of stuck with their big speaker or their big amplifiers, or even like some of these big DACs. I've seen like playback design DAC costing, what was it, almost $30,000, and then after like 3 years, couldn't even be sold for $6,000. He couldn't sell it. It went for like several months before he could sell it, and that's how broken the market is, and it's actually a lot like buying an Alfa Romeo car, where you're paying a premium price, and as soon as like a year has passed, it's already lost like half of its value. It's like that with the lot of gear, and you also have to take that into consideration. But I'm that type of person where I'm not into the usual stuff that most people are, so I won't buy stuff with like a warranty or whatever. It happens very rarely. I did that with my last purchase, my speaker, but I usually just buy from some few select people's some used gear, where I know that these guys usually have like prices that are way below the used market. But getting to know people like that will usually take you 5-10 years before you run into people like that once in a while sell something, perhaps once or twice a year, where they just give it to like a ridiculously low price compared to the rest of the market. And I've been lucky knowing people like that. Those are like the really few people you almost never ever see in the hi-fi world. So yeah, conclusion. Look at the entire market. Figure out where it is that you're kind of going, where the market is going. And once you've done that for like a couple of months, you might easily have to consider buying some stuff that is a lot more expensive. So that can actually save you a lot of money and a lot of time. So do that. Stop wasting time on buying these cheap offers on sale. Go for like a higher model or two, and then usually you'll have a proper tool where you can manipulate the sound in whatever direction you want to go. So yeah, that's the end of message of this video. And if you could, it would be nice if you could look at all of my other videos and give me a like and subscribe to them. So yeah, have a nice day. This is me logging out.